Hello writers! So in this video we're going to be going over strategies that you can do after we finish reading. So the strategies that we'll be talking about are goal monitoring, reading rhetorically, and the final summary. So goal monitoring is after we have completed reading the article, we want to look through all the notes, all those highlights that we made that related to our goals, and basically just ask ourselves, did I reach my reading goals? So this is again one of those that has to have been done previously. So before we read, we had to have established what the goal is. As we read, we had to have been highlighting and making notes of our goals. And then after we read, now we can question, did I reach my goals? So if you haven't done nothing with your goals, you cannot select to do this reading strategy because there's no point to it. We haven't done nothing for our goals. So we can't say, yes, I reached my goals or not. Right? So I'm going to be applying this reading strategy to Deborah Brandt's Sponsors of Literacy, just like how I've been doing in the previous videos. Right, so I'll be showing you how to apply the strategies. I will show you what are things that you can or should have in your article so that you can prove to your professor, hey, I'm doing this strategy. So first of all, you need to have your goals. Somewhere in the page, this is what the goals were. So for me, it was to learn what sponsors of literacy were and to learn about some examples of sponsors and see if I have seen or encountered any of the sponsors before. Those were my reading goals. And in the previous video, I showed you all things that I would have highlighted, things that are written on the side as my notes, right? Things like highlighting the definition of sponsors, which is sponsors as I come to think of them are agents local or distant, concrete or abstract, who enable, support, teach, model, as well as recruit, regulate, suppress, or withhold literacy. So that would have been connected to my goal number 1, which is the definition of what sponsors are. So I would have written next to it, so after circling or highlighting, I would have said, this is related to goal number 1, and I reached it because I learned that sponsors of literacy are, and blah, 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 right? Then somewhere later, I would go with goal number 2. Yes, I reached it because I learned some examples, such as teachers, my love for Harry Potter, my deck of cards. These are things that are sponsors of my literacy, right? So this is what I would want to see for students who pick this strategy, right? Indication of what is the goal that you're referencing, did you reach it or not, and why do you think this is the case? The next strategy is reading rhetorically, which again, something that we have been talking about in the previous 2 videos. Rhetorically means to be able to communicate effectively, meaning to communicate well, and you do so by always having audience, purpose, and form in mind. Who am I writing for? Why am I writing for? And what is the best way to send this message? These are things that you can do if you plan on writing a research paper, right? So reading like a writer means eventually I'm going to write, right? So I want to soak in as much as I can from what I'm reading so that maybe I can replicate what I'm reading later in my writing. So we're reading like future writers, which we all are. We're all writers. So if you're planning on writing a research paper one day, specifically a research on the topic that you're reading about, you want to question who was cited, right? If you're writing an entire article on this topic, you don't have to go do additional research. You can simply just look at who were the people that were cited by this author and just really quickly read through those articles so you could get more information to talk about in your paper. If the author is someone who was mentioned constantly in that article and in other articles, you keep seeing this name pop out constantly, then you know that this person was someone who was very well known and an authority figure in this field. So maybe you want to look up who they were, right? So if an author is constantly being brought up, then you know this person is famous for knowing this topic, and if I don't mention them in my own research, then my audience is going to question, did I really do my research if the number 1 person who was known for this topic wasn't discussed, right? Going back to Deborah Brandt, she was the one who really invented the term sponsors of literacy, right? So if I were to write an entire article of sponsors of literacy and I never mentioned Brandt, whoever was reading would definitely question, oh, I don't think I can trust this person because she never even mentioned Brent, right? So that's something that you want to have in mind if you're planning on doing research on a particular topic. You want to kind of establish who are the main people who are discussing this topic. If you just want to just make note of things that will help you in your reading or in your writing, these are questions that you could ask yourself. How were sources cited? So we will all eventually need to cite sources. So definitely looking at how they did so can help us so that we can figure out how to cite our own sources. So did they use quotes? Did they use paraphrasing? Or what were the things that they used to reference their sources? This is coming from Deborah Brandt. So here she is citing Ket. In her sentence, it says, as a result, print jobs were outsourced to the multi-skilled environment of the craft shop. And in parentheses, it's Ket 67 through 70, indicating that she got this information from those pages, 67 through 70. This is written in MLA format. So for those who are not familiar with Joseph Ket, he is a researcher in literacy and education, very, very well-known educator and researcher. So Ket is someone who is constantly or almost always cited in articles that are having to do anything related to education, right? So I know that Brandt did her research because she cited Ket, who again is like a very well-known researcher in education. That would be how it will be related to reading rhetorically for research. So this is something that you could do if you want to prove to your professor that you're doing this. You identify someone who was cited and give background on who they were, which is basically kind of connected to strategies that we did before we read, which is do background on the research. You can do research on someone from that was cited. In that bottom of the screen, I have how Deborah Brandt cited in the work cited. So that is something that we can use because we will have to learn how to properly cite using either MLA, A.K.A, Chicago style in our writing. So this is how she cited Kent's argument in her work cited. So this is a really dated, so I wouldn't follow this exact format. There are definitely things that changed, like things of where the period needs to go and things like that. But it lets us know that, hey, there are two things that we need to cite. First is in our actual article. In this case, Brandt paraphrased, put in her own words what Kent's argument was, then cited at the very end of that sentence. And then again, at the very end of her article, we have this really lengthy citation where it's full name, the name of the article, when it was published, and where it was, right? So this gives us an idea of, hey, this is how to properly cite. So the final strategy is final summary. In order to test your knowledge and keep a record of what you have read, create a brief summary of the reading. So this is probably one of the most important strategies because it's where we test our knowledge. Was I really understanding and comprehending what I was reading? And if so, well, let's make a final summary of it so that we won't forget it. You can do bullet point lists, you can do a short paragraph, you can do a concept map version. Again, I am applying the strategy to Deborah Brandt's Sponsors of Literacy. So at the very bottom, once I have finished looking through all her references, I would have added my final summary. So here I have 3 different versions. On the left hand side, I have the bullet points. So I made 3 bullet points. Sponsors of literacy equals people, ideas, policies that affect literacy. I put examples, teachers, technology, parents, and hobbies. And I put what her methodology was, which was interviews. So 3 quick bullet points that summarize her entire article. On the right hand side, I have the paragraph version. Sponsors of literacy are people, places, ideas, and policies that affect literacy. Some examples discussed by Brandt that she discovered through her interviews include parents, access to technology, hobbies, and education. And at the bottom, I have the concept map version. So in the middle, I have the word sponsors that extend to arrows. One including interviews, one education and teachers, one that says parents, and one that says technology. So it's up to you what version is most helpful for you, but if you find a way to summarize it, again, it will test your knowledge of did I really understand what I read. And if you need to have read this for an assignment, it is going to be really, really valuable to have a quick summary to read to remember what you read than it would be to have to read the entire article all over again. So what are the strategies that we went over today? Goal monitoring, rhetorical reading, and final summary. So why should you apply reading strategies after you finish reading? Well, one is to recall information. Can you really recall the information that you read? Did you really read information? Even if you didn't apply any strategies, even if you didn't do nothing before you read, nothing as you read, can you recall the information, right? You're testing yourself. If you can, write a final summary, right? Like I said, this is probably one of the most important strategies that you can do to try to test your knowledge of what you read. And to expand your repertoire. So if you are planning on doing research, you really want to figure out who was cited and how was that cited. So you can expand your knowledge on how to use sources, which is something that's going to be really important in your college career. You're always going to be expected to cite people, to cite sources, so you really want to know how to cite. And so you're expanding your knowledge on that topic. All right, that's it. That are all the reading strategies that I have to go over. Thank you all.